How and when was the whole Bible put together as one book?
Man, the 20-second answer on that is, God raises up a community, and then through various means brings about some writings that are acknowledged by the community as being authoritative from God. That happened with the Old Testament over a process of time. And it was much more informal than it was formal. They didn't really have any kind of formal decision about a canon in the Old Testament till, what was it, the Council of around 90.
For years they called it the Jamnia Council of 90.
Yeah,
even
Jamnia.
that's...
I know, and we're not sure how historical that is. But in any case, it was never much disputed. It was just sort of understood that these are the books that God has given us. In the New Testament, something similar happened where the Lord, inspired people to write in the context of a community works that were from the start acknowledged as being authoritative. Paul writes letters, and they're accepted as being authoritative right from the get-go. They're spread out, and that was just sort of assumed. It was not a formal process. It was just sort of acknowledged among the people of God that these are the writings that we live by. They're authoritative. They're God-breathed. When controversy broke out in the late 2nd century, by a heretic named Marcion, who tried to now come up with his own canon, that's what forced the hand of the church to say, wait a minute, we have to distinguish our beliefs from him, because he had quite a following, and so they had to come up with a formal canon. The word canon just means rule. And so that's when they had councils to decide which books, make it authoritative, are part of our canon and which aren't. And with the exception of 6, possibly 7 books in the New Testament, there was absolute uniform agreement, and with those others there wasn't much disagreement, though there were some who disputed it for various reasons. But the idea that the church created the canon is simply false, and you're hearing that a lot these days. Da Vinci Code, the guy says that. The church didn't create the canon. The church formally acknowledged the canon when it was forced to distinguish it from the false canon that this heretic was coming up with.
It's really important, because a common thing, whether it's Dan Brown or whether it's I know a number of New Age books I've read that make this claim that Constantine called a council and he voted the Bible into it. It's like, wait a minute, we're talking, Constantine, Nicaea 325. We have by well over 100 years before that clear consensus on almost all the New Testament documents. We can show that within early 2nd century, the 20 kind of central texts of the New Testament are being commonly and universally recognized by the Mediterranean churches as just, those are our books. The 4 Gospels, for example, Paul's letters. What happened formally at the Council of Nicaea, and actually even after that, Athanasius later in that century, is simply, as Greg said, pronouncing clearly against heretical challenges what had always, for years, been the operation of most churches in the Mediterranean world. It was not a vote. It was saying, let's say out loud and formally what in fact has been the case for over a century. That's an important point.
It's also important to try to remember that in the ancient world, very much unlike the modern world, you have a strong sense of community, especially around religious beliefs and religious practices. And so there are authoritative teachers who are just acknowledged by the community, and that's passed down. And these writings are simply written snippets of the authoritative teachings of these founders. And so there's a long line of continuity in the church tradition about these matters. And so it didn't need to be formalized until it was challenged by this heretic.